Hello and welcome, my name is Sai. Today we're going to be talking about chords. Thanks, Bob. On the screen there's a label diagram of a piano. If you don't know all of the note names, no problem. Just screenshot this diagram and keep it nearby while we proceed with the rest of the video. Later on in the video, we'll make this diagram together. So if you don't have it on hand in the future and you want to reenact all of the things that we talked about today, then you can remake the diagram for yourself. It's also really good to have it memorized, so if you're playing a different instrument, you can still use this if you really like it. A bit of a side note, I got this 2016 iPad Pro and Apple Pencil pre-owned a couple months ago, and any excuse to use it, I'm there. So we're going to use that today. I will put the screen recording of what I'm doing as we're talking on over my face, so you don't see the top of my head the whole video. All right, let's enter my iPad. Now, going to draw this little square just as a backdrop for our chord formulas. We're going to be doing 3-note chords today. So let's start with the formula for a major chord. Major chord. Oh my gosh, I feel like Khan Academy, one of my favorite YouTube channels. So the formula is root 5 and 4. So let's dive into that. So first we're going to find our root note. That's step 1, which is the name of the chord. So if we want to play a C major chord, our root note is a C. Now step 2, count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're just going up the piano, we're moving to the right, and we're counting every key in our path, which includes the black keys. We're including our first note, our root note, in that count. So root note is number 1 and E is number 5. So that identifies our second note in our major chord. Now to find our third note in our major chord, we are going to count to 4, again including the E in our count. So I just erased the other numbers so it wasn't all jumbled up. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that gives us our third note in our major chord. C, E, and G is the C major chord. There are other more theoretically based ways to find chords, but this is our super simple, just need a diagram way to find all the notes in the chord. All right, next we're going to do the minor chord pattern. So again, we start with a root note, then we count to 4, and then we count to 5. So it's very similar to the major chord, except there's a little bit of a switch in the middle. Okay, so our root note for this C minor chord is still a C, because it's the first thing that we say when we're talking about the chord. Not all chords are like this, but that's how these kinds of chords go. Okay, so we are going to count to 4, getting everything in our path. And now we're going to count to 5, still including the note that we just landed on, so the D sharp or E flat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice that we landed on the same G and we started on the same C. So the only note that was different was the middle note, and that is the difference between a major and minor chord, is that middle note. So that's great. Now let's clear off some of our C related circles, and let's start on a black key, because we can do that too with the same pattern. All right, so I just moved our little formula box over to the left because I wanted to do chords starting on the F sharp. So I needed a little more space over to the right. All right, so let's start with our F sharp major chord. So our root note is F sharp, and then we are going to count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, making sure to remember to include that F sharp. So our next note is A sharp, that's our middle note. Now we're going to count to 4. Let's erase these. Count to 4, including that note that we just found. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and that is going to give us our F sharp major chord, because F sharp is the root note. All right, let's do the same thing, but this time we're going to find the F sharp minor chord, how to play that. So we know quickly that really we could just move our middle note and that would suffice, because we saw that in our last example. that just lowering our middle note one piano key is going to make our major chord a minor chord. But for the sake of using our formulas, because we worked so hard on them, we're going to do it again. I erased the green this time around just because since we're into the black keys, I felt like it would look a little bit confusing, a little bit messy. Okay, F sharp minor, find our root note, check. Now count to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Great, check. Now count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, and we knew that is how it was going to end up, but now we see it in action using our formula. So you can start any chord, major or minor, 3-note chord, on any piano key, on any note, using this formula, and it will be correct. If you're playing inverted chords, you have to do slightly different things, but this will still allow you to find the notes that are in the chord. This same strategy is transferable to stringed instruments that are fretted. So if you are playing a ukulele or a guitar and you want to stay, you don't have to stay on one string, but it's really straightforward if you stay on one string. You can identify your root note, and then you're going to count up 5 frets or 4 frets depending on which chord you're playing. Just make sure that you always include the root note in your counting, and then when you find your middle note, make sure to include that as number 1 as you count to find the last note. All right, so let's create the diagram that we saw earlier in the video, our golden standard diagram. In order to find out which note is what on the piano, well, this one is already labeled, so pretend that's not there because you may find yourself in front of a keyboard that is not labeled. So the first thing that we're going to notice is that a piano has black keys and white keys, or off-white, or whatever, and they're arranged in a pattern. So we have a group of 2 black keys, and then there's a space where there's no black keys. And then we have a group of 3 black keys, and then again another space, and then a group of 2 and a space, and a group of 3 and a space. So this keyboard is a snippet of a whole keyboard, but you can still see group of 2, group of 3, group of 2, group of 3, group of 2, group of 3. So we're going to use that to our advantage because it helps us to figure out where we are. So when we look at the group of 2 black keys, we're going to call those chopsticks. So chopsticks start with C. Chopsticks start with C. And you can label all of the chopsticks on the piano and all of the C notes on the piano. Next, we're going to look at our group of 3. So we can call that a fork. I suppose it's more of a trident, but we're going to call it a fork. Forks start with F. And again, forks start with F. Okay, so let's take a look at our alphabet, just going from A to G. That's all we'll need for this. All right, so we are just going to use our alphabet and the order to fill in the blanks. After C comes D and E, and then we have F, and then G and A and B, and then there's a C again. After C comes D, E, and then we've already labeled the F, G, A, B, and there's a C again. D, E, F, G, A, and so on. So let's zoom into our diagram that we were using earlier in the video. Okay, now that we know all of our white keys, we've completed the first step in labeling our keyboard. Now what we're going to do is we're going to label the black keys by referring to the white key that's next to it. So if we look at our C note here on the left, right to the right of the C note, so just above the C note, it's going to be a little bit higher if you were to actually play it on a piano. That is going to be a C sharp. Now let's go again here. A little bit higher than a D is a D sharp. A little bit higher than an F is an F sharp. Higher than a G is a G sharp. Higher than an A is an A sharp, and so on. C sharp and D sharp. Good. So that is giving us all of our sharps. Depending on the context, you may or may not use sharps in the song that you're playing, or the song that you're singing, or the key that you're in. So we're also going to label those notes, those same black keys, those same notes that we just labeled. We're going to label them also with their flat names. So now we're going to go to the left. So to the left of the E is E flat. To the left of D is D flat. And to the left of the B is B flat, and so on. And there you have it. Let's erase these arrows. Now it looks exactly like the diagram that we used earlier. Perfect. All right, everybody, that is how you can figure out any 3-note major and minor chord. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.